him. You said you had a prayer group with him. And how did he become minority leader? You said that you guys ousted whoever the minority leader was. I don't remember who it was at that time. You said he was maybe had alcohol problems, or he embarrassed the caucus and things. The minority leader before Ford had some problems.
Our minority leader.
Your minority leader.
Yeah, he was.
And a bunch of you guys got together and said, we got to change this up.
Yeah. Well, there were four of us. It started out with a guy named Mel Laird.
Mel Laird was a House member who became Secretary of Defense later, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was from Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, okay.
He came over to me and asked me a question. And I said, let's move up to the front.
Okay.
So, to the side, so we won't disturb anybody by talking, because I wanted to talk to him about some things and about running, and for the leader. And so we did, and I said we ought to get a couple other guys to go with us. And I told him how Jesus did it with a few people, 12, and
Right.
he started out with fewer than that. So he said, okay, and he would do that. And he said, I'll talk to Jerry Ford, and I said I would talk to Roger Goodell. And so whenever there was a quorum call, we'd leave immediately, go and meet in the chapel, and get back in time again.
Okay.
Yeah.
This little group of you.
There's the four of us.
Okay.
Yeah. And then that expanded to others and kept growing. So
You and Jerry Ford was kind of recruited to run for leader.
Yeah,
He wasn't like he was running around wanting it. You guys said we need someone.
he was in the group, and came over the news that who would let's see, he was vice president for
Agnew.
Whoever was the head of this stuff, it was.
He's gonna close the door, so
You
it's
can
a
close
little
the door.
quieter,
No, it's a long back in.
No, it's back in the '60s. I think you told me that the minority leader got dumped because you guys got Jerry Ford to run for minority leader.
Yeah.
And you had a little prayer group that met every week, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you still met after Ford was
appointed every
appointed.
week, and then somebody, it was in the news that whoever was president or vice president was going to leave.
Agnew was going to be resigning, in '73.
Yeah. So, and Jerry Ford was his vice president. That's who it was.
Yeah.
But he'd come up to that meeting every week, like
That prayer group. So he was vice president. He still hung out with you guys, his house buddies. And you were with him in that private room.
Yeah.
And didn't you tell the staff nobody is to bother us during this prayer time?
And they came anyway.
And they barged in.
These circumstances. Yeah, you got a better memory.
You told me this story, and you said that it was you and I don't know if Laird was part of that because he was Secretary of Defense by that time.
Yeah.
But you said it was you and Jerry Ford and a handful of other guys met every week for prayer.
Yeah.
And you told the staff no one is to bother us during this 1 hour time every week. And Ford still hung out with you after he was vice president. And then it was, I think, October of '73. They barged in, and you guys said, you were told to never bother us during this time. And they said, Nixon's leaving. And
so,
they rushed, that was in '74. When he was vice president, they rushed him out and said, Nixon's leaving, August of '74, I think you said. and they barged in and said, "We got to get Ford out of here." And it sounded like he didn't even know Nixon was leaving at that time.
Yeah, Ford. I remember the conversation went like this when we got the news. They knew you were supposed to be interrupted, and but I think under the circumstances I ought to interrupt you, as Jeff said.
Right.
And then I said, "Well, Jerry, what are you going to say when somebody comes to you and says, now you're president?" He said, "Oh, that isn't going to happen." I said, "That's exactly what's going to happen." And he said, "Well, I'll think about it between now and then." And he said, "Okay, he would."
Didn't take too long for him.
Yeah. So for a while.
Were you surprised when Nixon wanted him to be his vice president, or was part of that just that he was so well liked that he'd get confirmed in a Democratic Congress to be vice president? Or you were not surprised at that?
I don't remember exactly how that went, but there's that meeting where Laird, well, I came into the chambers and sat down by somebody who was fairly new on the right side, and there was a walkway and then a larger place for the Republicans to sit, and then the table that the ones that work on a committee work from. And I sat down by this guy, and Mel Laird got up and spoke in favor of the bill.
Okay.
And this person I was sitting next to him said to me, "He isn't for the bill." Just like that, perplexed. I said, "No, he isn't." "Well, he's just speaking for it." I said, "Mel Laird speaks in favor of something that he's against the other way around, says that home in a newsletter, and then he does it the other way, which is in the congressional record, and he says that to other people."
So he's always on every side of the issue.
Whoever they are.
That's old school.
The issue. I said, "How does he know how they are?" And he sent out a questionnaire like I did and urged them to answer him back in, so that's where he got his list.
Interesting. Wow. His district was kind of next to yours, across the river, I think, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it over in southern Wisconsin somewhere? Laird? I think he was over in southern Wisconsin somewhere.
Yeah, speak a little bit louder.
Oh, was Melvin Laird from southern Wisconsin?
I suppose.
Somewhere over there, if I remember right. Yeah. So when did you decide to run for governor? Because you seem to like Congress, and at some point you had to decide to get out of there and run for governor.
What caused me to decide to run?
It's you must have been encouraged to be run for governor.
Oh, yeah. No.
This was in '78.
My wife and I were, during the Christmas recess up in northern Minnesota at a lodge with our youngest son, Ben. And we talked a lot about that because people were pushing me to run. And so we talked about it, and there was a guy whose name escapes me now. He spent a lot of time in Arizona, and so he wasn't here. He was in Arizona.
Okay.
And I called him up, and I said, whatever his first name was, "How'd you like to be my campaign manager for governor?" He said, I've been talking to you. I wish you would run." I said, "I'm going to run."
Wow, so you made the decision.
I said, with the expectation that you would say yes to run my campaign. And he said, well, you know, I'd say yes, but I said, there's another thing to it. I'm not going to raise a cent.
Oh, he didn't want to do fundraising.
Yeah.
So someone had to raise money for you.
Yeah.
Which is always tough.
So I said, you got to raise it all. And he said, yep, he'd do that. And then, I don't remember do you remember what figure I laid on him?
Back in those days?
Yeah, there was.
Boy, what was a lot of money to raise?
It was either 5,000 or 500.
5,000? Boy, that'd be a pretty cheap run for governor, but I suppose in the 70s you could get by with that.
Well, it was a very cheap one, because I wanted people to talk about that. If they sent me more than that, I'd send it back.
Oh my gosh.
Sure, it'd have to be 5,000.
Who would do that today?
Then the first contribution I got was 60,000, and then my campaign said, well, we got that before you put your rule into place. We just keep that. I said, no way.
So you sent that money
we
back?
We put that in before we put our rule in.
Oh,
that
wow.
wouldn't work. You send that back to him again, and if he wants to contribute to my campaign, he can contribute 5,000, which he did.
So you put a limit of 5,000 a person,
per person,
yourself.
Yeah.
And said 5,000. Okay.
And,
so they must have raised maybe a couple 100,000 to run for governor in those days.
Well, I got a good amount.
Yeah,
but
people
you
all over limited it to 5,000.
Talked about that. So of all the amazing thing was all the $500 contributions there were just flooded us with $500 with a letter saying we've never heard of a politician who refused money
the bigger contributions.
And so if anybody did test me, like the insurance people, they sent me $5,000 for this up against the lid. That was all. And they wanted, while I was in office, claimed that they had helped pay for my campaign, but I tell them to write them back and tell them no more than anybody else did.
Right. Well, that shows the integrity you have when people want things and whatnot.
So.
But you had to win at the convention, and you won the convention vote over other people.
Right.
And Durenberger wanted to run for governor at first, right?
Yeah, you're right.
And you pushed him out, or somebody pushed him to run for Senate instead. I don't know who exactly did that.
Yeah.
But they got him to move over to the Senate race.
Yeah, yeah. And one of his close companions came to me and wanted to make a deal with me that Durenberger would be my running mate and for governor. Then they said that the seat's going to open up for a senator, and then you could run for that.
Would you have picked him as a running mate, or did you already have a running mate picked?
I don't think I had one.
You didn't have one yet, but then he moved to the Senate race, so you didn't have to pick him as a running mate.
Yeah, my answer to them was, I don't make any deals.
Okay, that's good for you. Integrity.
Yeah.
That's the backroom deals that people probably were trying to figure out to make everything work.
So I said, the guy said to me, well, I got to tell other people that you wouldn't do that, because that would be so good for me, for the whole party, And I said, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah.
and
own your decision.
If the guy refuses, he must have some good qualities to him.
What was the big issue that year? You won big, Durenberger won big, Boschwitz won big, they won all these House seats. Was it just that Wendell Anderson appointed himself to the Senate and people were angry about that?
Maybe that, because our first billboard was something scary is going to happen to the Democratic Party. It's called an election.
So you had a billboard that said something scary is going to happen to the Democrats. It's called an election, and that's because they Perpich was lieutenant governor and wasn't elected. He wasn't elected governor. He was elevated to be governor.
From that.
Anderson appointed himself, kind of, with Perpich appointing him, and then
to the Senate.
the other seat was held by Humphrey's wife, if I remember right, because he died in office, right? So you had all appointed people in the highest offices.
Yeah.
The lieutenant governor would have been appointed too, I suppose.
That's right.
But you had Perpich you defeated in '78, and then he came in. So you served between his terms, and then he came in, and you decided not to run again in '82.
Yeah.
Your lieutenant governor, did you know him much beforehand?
Lou Wongberg?
Lou Wongberg, right? That was
Didn't know him at all.
Didn't know him at all? Okay.
My thinking was when they got behind him, Nancy Bradis was a favorite.
She was Nancy Bradis was a woman from Rochester. Was a senator.
Yeah.
Okay, so they wanted her to be your running mate.
So I called my team together, and I said, "This seems kind of small, but Nancy Bradis is a beautiful woman. I don't want my wife to be jealous.
Really?
Of the person who's going to be in the next office."
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh. So you thought Gretchen might not like attractive female as your running mate.
No.
So you ditched out on that.
So I didn't even wait to talk to her.
Did Nancy want to be lieutenant governor, do you think?
The worst way.
She did, yeah. I knew Nancy Bradis, and I can see her fancying herself for that. And you didn't live too far from each other. You maybe wanted more balance geographically, huh? Because weren't you down in that southeast part of the state?
Yeah.
And she was from Rochester, so you'd have lived a couple miles apart.
Yeah, so there were a lot of people that were for her there.
Yeah, in your congressional district.
Yeah.
So where was Wongberg from? Did you have a little committee that found him? Because you didn't know him at all.
Yeah, a committee from western Minnesota decided they were going to pick their own candidate, and they picked him. What was he, school superintendent?
I think he was Bemidji school superintendent.
Yeah.
So was that at the convention where they said, here's a guy?
I think it was at the convention.
So you kind of said, I'll take whoever you guys kind of want?
What?
Did you kind of tell the delegates, I'll take who you want? Or did you kind of met with them?
I said you pick him.
Okay.
But don't take.
Yeah, probably not
I don't
Nancy.
want any woman running with me.
With Nancy, because of your wife maybe not liking that. Yeah. That's interesting. I get that. And that was, of course, the 1970s when people maybe thought differently on that kind of thing. I totally understand, your thought process on that with your wife and the circumstances.
One of those elections, I used the Hubert Humphrey technique to get endorsed by the convention. And it was in Rochester. And at the convention, I used his technique to this extent, that Hubert Humphrey was running for the United States Senate when I was at St. Olaf College, and I was president of the Republican Club.
Okay. And
one of the things that I learned is all those Republicans sitting together in the high school auditorium, bad-mouthing Hubert Humphrey. And when he came in the back door, somebody looked back and said, "There he is. There he is. Oh, I'd never vote for him."
Yeah, right.
Really
tough on him.
They really blasted him. And so I watched him. And when he came in, he took his hat his coat and hat off, threw him across the back of a seat, turned up the aisle, and then people started clapping. The Democrats' side over on the left stood up for him, and then independents were in the middle. They were standing up for him, so the Republicans were feeling embarrassed, and they stood up too at the end as he walked up the stairway to the stage. And I said, I saw that once before when some religious group did that, came to Washington and had a meeting of that nature. And I thought then, yeah, that's pretty sneaky.
It's a good way to, it's like getting the whole group to kind of rally around.
Yeah.
Wasn't Humphrey known to know everybody's name? When he met you one time at a county fair, he remembered your name forever. He kind of had a reputation like that.
He did. Yeah, that's his reputation.
And you worked with him,
even
obviously.
If he met people in a different place. You know, you have to. Most of us have to associate with a place. Or I probably told you a story about the guy who was running against me, and the photographer came up to a guy who was running against me, and Austin, that's who it was. He said, I'd like to take your picture. And he said, what do you want to take a picture of me for? He said, you're running against Quie. Oh yeah, he says, I'm going around shaking hands. That's the only way you can get elected. I'll never get elected, but I won't get beat so bad.
Because at least he's trying.
If I get more votes. And so he has, and the reporter came up and told me that story. Yeah, that was it. And because at first I didn't have that part of the district, and they added that to me.
Okay.
So that was new to me in Austin. That was such a beastly Democrat.
Union town.
Union town, yeah. And so they had a convention, and then to their surprise, they endorsed me instead of the guy from that county.
Wow.
And because I use that technique of walking.
Getting everybody to rally up.
Get them all. And it's so fun to see the people who worked for me, then out of embarrassment would get up and stand up.
Make them stand.
And then somebody says, I move that we endorse Al Quie by majority consent,
That's great.
Yeah, everybody else.
Well, that's a good strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's great to remember.
Politics.
Did you ever get criticized? You voted for the Civil Rights Bill, right?
That's right.
64. Did you ever get any guff from people? I mean, you didn't have a lot of minorities in southern Minnesota, obviously, in your district, but you always thought it was the right thing to do. Did anyone give you a bad time on that or not?
Very few. And one of them was in the same county that Wabasha County.
What was their reasoning for not liking it?
About what?
The reason they didn't like the Civil Rights Act, they just thought the federal government didn't belong in that.
They didn't.
Yeah, that's what they felt.
Yeah, they didn't think they ought to be it. And my answer to them was, my grandfather came from Norway. Civil War came. He was one of the first people who enlisted. While he was waiting to get called up, he went and recruited people to join the first Minnesota Volunteers, and he was fought in, I think, 26 battles.
In the Civil War?
In the Civil War.
This is your regular grandpa was in the Civil War?
Yeah.
Not your great-grandpa?
No.
Your dad's dad?
My dad's dad.
Was in the Civil War?
Yeah.
Did you ever know him?
Huh?
Did you ever know
your
him?
grandpa?
No, he died before I was born.
Died before you were born.
Yeah, he died in 18 and I was born in 23.
He missed you by 5 years.
Yeah.
But that's pretty impressive.
It sure
Is that one reason, Al, that you were a Republican? Is the party was founded on anti-slavery. Your grandpa was in the Civil War, obviously. I mean, do you think that impacted things, that your family were abolitionists and that followed through?
I expect that was a good part of it because his portrait was hanging on the living room wall. And so
His Civil War uniform on, probably, or something?
No, he was in a
just
suit.
in a suit, okay.
Because we had a hired man before I was born who stole my grandpa's uniform.
Really?
And
Oh, wow.
he packed up his stuff when he left, and he came to Dad, who was sitting in the living room, and says, "I'm all packed up, ready to go." He said, "Do you want to check to see that I didn't take anything?" And Dad said, "Oh, no, I trust you." And here he had all of Dad's stuff.
From the Civil War.
Yeah.
Oh.
Including his saber.
Oh, no.
Oh, I was that way. Just aggravating me. That was the case.
Wow.
So
the Civil Rights Bill you voted for, you explained that your grandfather was in the Civil War,
That's
was
right.
an abolitionist,
yeah,
Republican, and you were proud to vote for that
yeah.
bill.
But as some of the Southern congressmen said to me afterwards, was that when I finished my speech on the floor, I stood there and looked at every one of them around the room. And then I moved over to the Democrat side too, because some of them were from the South. They usually sat in the back, and I looked at them one by one. And I said, as I said, I'm going to do it. But here's the reason: it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I know one Southern guy said to me, it really hit my conscience.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't vote against this. And the press all had it was going to be defeated in the House. And another guy said, I had decided when this issue come up that I would probably not vote or even vote for it. But I decided, no, I'm not going to. But when it came to the vote, and I remembered your words, it's the right thing to do, I couldn't vote against it. So
interesting.
Civil rights.
So did you serve with George Bush in the House?
What?
Did you serve with George Bush in the House?
Yeah.
Yep. The president later.
So did you get to know him in the House?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was from Texas.
Yeah.
He was there a couple terms, not real long, so I suppose you didn't know him real well.
No, it wasn't.
You served with George W. Bush for 2 terms, I suppose. I think that's how long he was there.
Yeah.
So you
H.W.
knew,
It was
H.W. Bush, right?
Yeah. Then he wasn't he the vice president?
He was
Yep.
under Reagan, yep.
But he wasn't his dad's vice president, was he?
Well, there's the young Bush and the old Bush. So
Yeah.
the older one was Reagan's vice president, and then the son was president himself without being vice president. Yeah.
Okay, then it was the son. Anyway, what if you get a call from the White House and say, Mr. Bush, we just talked over it. You're the president. You're going to be the president. And he went, oh, they'll never do that, like that.
Right.
And shortly after that, the phone call came.
Did you think that you might have been vice president under Reagan? Because we saw a button in an antique store that said Reagan Quie, if I remember right.
Yep.
like they wanted you, because you were governor, right? In the late 70s and early 80s. Was there did you ever get any contact from the Reagan people that maybe you would be as vice president at some point that you remember?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah, and Reagan was at Rochester. And went over one of the things he said in his speech. You all know I suppose it was governor. He said, next election, you won't be your governor. You'll be my vice president.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So what happened because you didn't be vice president? Did you not want to do it, or did he change his mind and decide to go with somebody else?
I didn't. I got a hold of his campaign manager, and they took off and flew away, so I followed that up, caught him at his next stop, and I said, I just want to tell you that when you sit down and talk about vice president, if anybody suggests that I be his vice president, the answer is going to be no. And I said, it isn't because I'm going to vote against him or anything. I'm going to vote for him. And but I don't think if something happens to Reagan, I want to be.
That you're ready for it, or you want to do it.
Yeah.
So you told him never mind.
Said, really? And then he talked to somebody in the press, had that article, and I never kept that copy from the New York paper, whatever it was.
So you took your name off the list, basically, and said, never mind.
Yeah.
So then he ended up with George Bush as his vice president, and I think there were some other people. In fact, Ford for a time talked about maybe coming back and being his vice president as a co-president, and then Jerry Ford said, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So you knew all these guys.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well.
And I think, and then you finished up your term as governor in '82, and you decided not to run again.
Mm-hmm.
And did you just feel at peace with that decision, or did it eat you up a little bit?
Why did I say I wasn't going to run again?
You had a tough recession. You were dealing with a bad budget deficit, and I know that really bothered you.
Well, we handled that when I became governor.
Yeah. But
can't remember what it was.
Just decided you didn't want to do it anymore, I think, was part of it. And you'd been in Congress for 20 years.
Yeah.
And governor for 4, and I suppose you were ready to be done. And did you take sides between Wheelock Whitney and your lieutenant governor, or did you stay out of all that? When it came time for the 1982 election, did you just say, I'm going to stay out of this?
I stayed out of that. Yeah.
Because I'm sure you knew both of them.
Yeah.
And your lieutenant governor was the endorsed candidate, but he got defeated by Wheelock in the primary.
Yeah, that's right.
So and then Perpich got elected anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that was a surprise to you or not, but that Perpich came back.
Probably did.
A little surprising.
He probably did.
Did you get along with?
He came from that silk stocking district.
Yeah.
So you
don't know what a silk stocking district is?
Kind of the wealthy.
The wives of wealthy people wore silk stockings.
Yeah. And Wheelock Whitney was wealthy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a wealthy guy and spent a lot of money in the primary and kind of got on television.
Yeah.
And so forth. And did you get along with Perpich, or did you just not have much of a relationship with him because you had defeated him in 1978? So you really didn't talk much with him.
He never got along with me.
Okay.
he refused to see me.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
After you defeated him, you didn't have a meeting where you met a transition?
Yeah. Till he went to Europe and came back and decided to run again.
Okay.
Then he came in and visited me.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And he knew you weren't going to run again?
Yeah. And he asked, any chance you supported me? And I said, no chance at all.
So he expected you to support him.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's kind of different.
That's indifferent, yeah.
One of the reasons is that he knew I would carry the 8th District, northern Minnesota. And here's the reason why he knew that. I went up to the county fair after the election, sometime or other, whether it was 2 years after the election or what. And I went to the Republican booth and hung out there. But I saw over at the Democrat booth that some people was talking and looking over at me as they were talking like that. So I figured, well, they must be talking about me.
Mm-hmm.
So after a while, I talked to a short fella over on our side. I said, I think they're talking about me. He said, yeah, I know most of those guys. I said, come on over and introduce me to him. And he brought me over and introduced me. And they kid him and said, why do you do it over at the Republican booth? And he said, I'm a Republican now.
Wow, they changed parties.
Yeah, and he said, what made you be a Republican? And he pointed to me and he said, this guy.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
And so we talked for some time then. And the end was, well, if he can do it, so can we. And so I shook hands with all of them.
Oh, got them all to switch their votes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
There was a big controversy up there at that time over the boundary waters.
Yeah.
And mining and abortion and things. So do you think that had a lot to do with people changing in northern Minnesota with those types of issues? Or was it a guy like you that was likable and they said, you know, this guy ain't so bad? Or was it a combination of that kind of stuff?
Probably. But when this little guy walked over to another booth, was the AFL-CIO booth, and when he went over there and talked to them, they were going like this, and then another guy said, sort of like that, opened his eyes a little bit, but like giving him permission to go back to the Democrat booth. And,
this was the union booth.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he said, some of the people I've been talking with over there wanted to meet you. I said, oh, sure, let's go. So I got over there and I said, listen, I ought to explain to you about my union background. He said, that's all right, we're going to support you. And I said, well, that's wonderful, but let me tell you why. And then before, I used to win the Democrat Party of my county, whether it was in the Twin Cities where organized labor was the strongest, or up on the Iron Range up here in that western part. And then one other was down at the Hormel plant. I met with them and they had pledged to me they would support me.
It's heavy labor down in Austin.
Yeah, organized labor at the back house, workers, and so that's how it is. They pledged their support.
Wow.
So did you grow up around Austin?
Around what?
Austin? Are you from that area?
No, from Northfield, the college town.
Oh, okay.
Denison, wasn't that your town? Denison?
Denison.
Yeah, Denison, little town by Northfield.
Little town.
So you grew up on a farm?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up on a farm.
Your grandpa that was in the Civil War came from Norway and settled on that farm, right?
Yeah. Settled in Wisconsin first, then he went over with the Hullings that moved over on there. Hullingdal.
Mm-hmm. And your district was mainly the southeastern part of Minnesota.
Yeah.
You went through a couple redistrictings. Did you think...
wait a minute, no. Southeastern part of Minnesota.
Wasn't your district kind of Rochester?
No, at first. But I got down to Rochester, but I didn't get into that far.
Okay.
The West came over and hooked up that one county.
Okay.
So when you were governor, did you live in the residence?
Mm-hmm.
Did your family enjoy that?
No.
They didn't?
Didn't like the governor's mansion that
How
much?
come?
My wife thought that was putting on airs. And I says, no, think out a residence for us. We won't call it the mansion, we'll call it the residence.
Mm-hmm.
And so she formed a residence club for people who were active as volunteers in various ways, heavily Republican at that time, and took the same cook as the Purpose head, and she said, I was Purpose's cook. I said, that must mean you had some pretty good recipes.
Were you supposed to fire the cook at the governor's residence? Is that what the expectation?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The expectation was you were going to bring your own cook in.
Yeah.
And you kept Purpose.
Put all Republicans in there.
Oh, geez.
A Republican cook, but you kept her.
Yeah.
And she did good for you.
And then once a week, we had a leadership meeting from the legislature.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd come down there and fill that whole table. And I remember afterwards, I was out in western Minnesota. He said, I want to tell you, Gretchen was my favorite first lady.
Oh, that's
Wow.
neat.
And I would say, well, tell me why. He said, she never held it against us that we were Democrats. And when we would come down there, we'd come down sharing cars and came together as Democrats. And I knew that was the case because I went down to visit Purpose once before I left office. He was talking about those electric lines, and those people were protesting. I went there. And so I went in there and shook hands with Roger Moe and others. I saw you come in there and shake hands with people like that. And those people, when I shook hands with them on the power line, they said, you weren't in favor of us destroying the towers. And I says, no. Well, they said, we only took down 3 towers. I said, well, that's still wrong.
That's still wrong, right?
And they said, now tell us why. And I said, if those towers were in the middle of fields, is what I think of, because I drove up there and I saw towers in the middle of fields. But he said a lot of them were along the telephone lines and along the roads. I see they weren't hurting a thing. The farmers could go around them. And one person stood up and said, you're right. No more towers will go down along fence lines.
So you kind of talked them out of destroying
And
these electrical lines.
That blunt statement of theirs, the others looked at each other, and they went like that. They agreed to each other right there.
To stop destroying these electrical towers. I remember that was a big deal.
Yeah,
in
sure
the
was.
70s, the farmers didn't want these big electric towers put up, but
Yeah.
there's no way to bring electricity into the metro unless they did it.
Yeah, but they could have gone, as they got close to the metro, they went along the roadsides.
Okay, along the freeways and the roadsides.
Yeah, they did that. But this one, they did that. And I said, now, just look at the farmer after he's tilled his fields. The farmer has to come down to that tower, go around it, go on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next time he comes back, he's got to go around it again, go like that, and come over. And it's just not tilled right in there.
Mm-hmm.
It leaves a blank space. And but I said, if that was a fence line, all he would have to do is to move out just a little bit, and your tilling hole would just go alongside.
Mm-hmm.
The tower sits on a concrete block, just outside that cement block, and then curve back in again. Hardly a thing is lost with that. And I say, you'll be friends of the farmer, and they'll speak up for you, because there may be some of them that didn't have electric milking machines, and now they would have
Now
it.
they have it, yeah.
Guys, that's me.
That makes sense, for sure.
And so,
Pretty
they
controversial.
changed. You said, you get our support from now on.
Okay, because that was controversial. I remember.
Oh, was it
that.
ever?
Boy, oh boy.
Yeah.
What did you think of Richard Nixon when this whole Watergate thing happened? Did you at first believe him? I'm sure you know John Zwak. You served in Congress with him. He was my congressman when I was a little kid. And John's widow told me that it just ate him up. He felt Nixon misled people, and he believed him for the longest time, that he knew nothing about any of this, and then he felt like he was misled. Did you feel Nixon knew about Watergate, or did his staff do it, and then he found out and said, let's cover it up because we don't want to get in trouble?
I think it was the latter.
The staff got out of control. And then he found out later, and instead of fessing up, he tried to bury it.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I think too.
Because I told you that when I was a new congressman, and
Nixon would have been vice president at that time.
Yeah, he was vice president, but still came to whatever club that was. It was a 400 club or whatever. And he'd come there to that. And so he'd ask me questions, and he knew my district so well. But here's a brilliant guy.
Nixon knew your district.
Huh?
Nixon knew your district.
Yeah. Oh,
wow.
He knew things real well. Yeah. And that's why when I mentioned about I'd like you to be in my cabinet when he was in Rochester. We had a
Okay,
connection
interesting.
once before
Okay.
at that meeting.
And you weren't real interested in being in Nixon's administration at all.
No.
Well, Laird was, right? Didn't
Yeah.
Mel Laird become defense secretary?
Yeah, he did.
And he was your buddy.
Yeah.
So he bailed out to be in the cabinet, but you didn't have an interest in that.
But we did some training of Nixon before that. There was 4 of us that got together once a week, and then what we did was go down to the White House, and for a while we had our meetings down there at the White House so he could be with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you surprised Nixon resigned at the end, or not really? He didn't have a choice.
I was surprised.
Okay.
Did you think he should have resigned?
I don't remember that.
Yeah. But he didn't have much of a choice at the end, probably.
He really didn't. Yeah. The tapping phones was his biggest aggression, wasn't it?
Right. Yeah, it's like spying on people. And I remember an interview with Nixon where he said, the dumbest thing about Watergate is that no one was ever going to elect McGovern president anyway.
Yeah.
So why did this ever happen?
Yeah.
I mean, he was just kind of matter of fact about it.
Yeah.
And it's obviously a sad part of history. But in '74, you got reelected fairly easily, but almost all the Republicans lost everywhere because of Watergate. Was that mainly just people liked you and you just probably were able to, you were known for your integrity, obviously, and that was probably the biggest issue, wouldn't you say, in that day and age, that people didn't trust their elected officials at that time because of Watergate, and you were able to still get reelected even though all these other guys were losing?
It was because in southern Minnesota, there was a young guy in the Farm Bureau who supported me. He and his wife died in a fire from synthetic in the clothes in their closet that burned.
Really?
Yeah, that was a shocker. And he had so actively been supporting me. A lot of the steel packhouse workers there was no steel workers down there, were there?
They were mainly northern Minnesota, but you had the packing house down in your district, yeah.
This one must have been just packhouse workers.
Agriculture
They
people.
lived in the agricultural stuff, worked in the pack plant. We're down there. And he came up and talked to people. In fact, he once, I guess, was in the union, and he asked me to come in and speak to the union again. And then I was there for the fair, and the union president came up to me and introduced himself as the union president. He said, "We really hear good things about you. Would you come to a union meeting?" And I said, "Sure," because the Republicans wouldn't be caught at a union meeting.
Right.
Otherwise, they sold out.
And you went right in there.
Yeah, I went right in and talked to them. and I talked to them about unionism too. And I said, my main reason is this. I have met a few people who were union members who kind of to the side said, "We really Republicans." And that means they were afraid to speak up. What I have heard of you folks is that you're not afraid to speak up. And then one other to the west of that, a union member who had heard about it, he came to me after the county west of it. He said, some of the union members live over there, and I'm going to call them together. We're going to support you. He's not ready to talk to them, and then they'll go and talk to the other union members. So,
and they supported you.
Yeah.
So really, through tough election cycles for Republicans, you always had this group of people that were crossover voters that stuck with you.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah.
Which is impressive.
I sure did.
Pretty impressive.
I'll never forget those guys up in northwestern Rice County when I did just that one, and the priest coming up to me. and apologizing to me for telling his parishioners or anybody who voted for me they would kick them out of the church.
Oh my. Wow. Because you were Lutheran or what?
Yeah, because I was Lutheran. And I came there, but the main one was I stood outside the door and shook hands with people like in a campaign.
After Mass.
Yeah. And I said, I'm not going to tell you the people here who urged me to stand outside and shake hands. But that's what happened. I should have, if I'd known how you felt since you had your church, is that I was not going to do that. And I said I did feel so uneasy about it, I just pulled out a little bit earlier from that. And then that experience, some of these guys were merchants and everything. They got my banners and everything, vote for Quie and everything like that.
Put them up in their stores.
And so I was the first person in all history that carried that township
as a Republican.
Yeah. First Republican.
There's a lot of changes have happened from then to now, and a lot of that.
Sure is now. But people were more true to their party at that time.
Yeah. Do you remember the 1979 tie in the House, Minnesota House?
When you were governor, the House was tied 67-67. Did you and Rod Searle? I'm sure you know Rod Searle, who was the speaker.
The only one I remember is on the racial question. I think so. No, let's see. How did it go? If a person was of the opposite party or of a different union, would you refuse, let's see, what was it? To reveal to them the political affiliation of those running for the union? I think that was it.
There's one of the, I was trying to think of what that issue was.
Running for the legislature.
Well, they switched to they had party designation in the 70s.
Oh yeah, party designation.
Before there was no party designation.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
And then when you came into office, there was 67 Democrats and 67 Republicans.
Okay, that's.
And you had to deal with that tied house, and I don't know exactly how that all worked.
Yeah.
But you didn't come out of the legislature, so you probably didn't have to deal with that quite as much. You maybe let the leadership of the party deal with that.
No, and I watched Elmer L. Anderson. He talked to those guys, and I sat with a Democrat from Goodhue County in the seat. That was really rough. During the Depression, the union came in then, and when the people sat in committee, they would lay their big stick on their shoulder. You vote right, or we'll give it to you.
Literally give them the stick.
Yeah.
Wow.
Holy cow.
So the people said, yes.
Did you watch politics as a younger guy when you were a teenager, or did you kind of not really get involved till the 50s?
My dad and mother were interested in politics when I was a very little guy.
Okay.
And they had a big sign for Hoover, and I was just a little baby.
Oh, wow.
And do you still remember that? You were in World War II, correct? And did you volunteer, or did you get drafted, or?
I volunteered.
You volunteered, just
well,
like your grandpa did.
I was frozen on the farm. My dad, because of my pleading a lot of it, went to the draft board and asked that they draft me.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Because you wanted to go.
I wanted to go. And I wanted to see if I couldn't get into the Navy Air Corps.
Okay.
And it's so interesting. The recruitment I was drafted, and then I went up to the bus, got on the Jefferson bus, and went right up there to the cities, and then I went to the Fort Sully where you could be drafted, and so for a day and a half, I stayed in a barracks at Fort Sullivan, was in the Army.
Okay.
Then they set it up for me to come and talk to a Navy recruiter. And so I went over to see him, and he said, of course, we'll accept you. You can apply. And said, we got a place for you. Said, we got a school in Northfield and St. Olaf College.
Okay.
We'd like you to go there if that's all right. I said, you bet it would.
So you recruited for the military at St. Olaf. Did you help recruit for the military, or you were?
They helped me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And did you get sent overseas as well? Did you have to go to Germany or Japan or anything?
Either Germany or
somewhere in Europe?
Japan, but someplace in the East.
And a lot of you guys...
I never went east, so I wasn't in the East.
Okay. Stayed in Western Europe somewhere.
Yeah. No, I was not in Europe.
When you were in Congress, weren't most of the members served in World War II in some capacity? I mean, a lot of those guys that were Nixon and Ford and Kennedy were all World War II vets. Mm-hmm. And a lot of you guys had served during, I had read somewhere that half or more of the members of Congress in the late 50s and 60s were World War II vets. 70s.
Yeah, I think so.
That generation.
I don't remember any military organization. Of joining any military organization. There may have been one, but I just spent enough time with it to remember.
Didn't need to get real active in it.
Yeah, there's some little fuzzy.
And I suppose when you were in the 60s in the House, you really didn't meet Kennedy too much when he was president, did you? You were a Republican, he was a Democrat, or did you have an opportunity to meet him a couple times when Kennedy was president?
Till the end.
Okay.
Then I went on the Education Labor Committee. And Easter recess came, that's the way it was. I went to the chair, Carl Perkins. I said, listen, you got Tennessee walk horses on your farm down in Kentucky. And I said, what do you say if I took my boys and go down there and work your horses for the time of recess? I won't go home to my district for that week that we have off. I'll work the horses. And he said, you would? I said, yeah, I will. And I said, you got any that are a real problem? And he said, I got a mare that's a real problem. And I got the color of her and all. He said most of our geldings. And so I spotted her right off the bat.
The troublemaker?
What?
The mare that was the troublemaker?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
the horse?
So I trained her, and I trained all those geldings down there.
For the committee chair.
He sent a farmer over to see if I knew what I was doing, and he reported back. And Carl Perkins gave me a gelding. Then for my own, I couldn't do anything right then with him in Congress. So I gave him to a doctor in Rochester. So
Wow.
I took him there. And then another guy, this is way from that, but another guy had helped me with quarter horses down there. And he was moving to Iowa, and he said he wanted to give me a quarter horse gelding. And so I went and said okay to him that I would take him. So I took that quarter horse gelding out there, and I trained him where I was living in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Oh, wow. So now is Carl Perkins the guy that the Perkins student loan program is named for?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
This is the guy you're talking about. He was chair of that committee.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of...
But what I was going to tell you, with the Republicans, I said, Carl, I'll tell you how to make this committee function better. And we sat there, and on one side of the table was all Democrats, and then then Carl Perkins in the middle, then his vice chair here, and facing him was another table, which was all Republicans. And when I became ranking member, I sat in the middle too. So I told him, and then there was a gap between them, so people could walk between them. Mm-hmm. They had staff that could move papers back and forth. Mm-hmm. So I said, here's what you do. You have the table just as they are, but have every other Republican.
Intermingle the Democrats and Republicans to sit together next to each other.
Before they couldn't. Now they sat beside each other. And the most senior people at this table, the ones facing this one, the less senior people. And I said, I'll sit in the middle on the other side, so I'll be facing you. We'll do that. And that's how we got legislation.
Wow.
Right. People got along with each other better.
Yeah.
They're sitting by
they
each
talk
other.
with each other like that. And
Perkins was...
and I may have told you before, I said, the first time he goes and calls on the farthest person over this side is a Democrat, and he calls on him. And I said, hey, wait a minute, how do you suppose the guy to your right feels you could have called on him?
Right, exactly. He's probably used to everybody being in order.
Yeah, yeah. So then they start working, and we got a lot of good legislation out of that.
Did you vote for most of the bills? They worked with you to help craft the bills?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you didn't just vote against
and
everything?
Our people had a voice, and civil rights legislation, of course, and other labor legislation. I remember going to some meeting in Michigan, up north of the lakes at Houghton, and up there is where we really got to know each other. And when we were done and we're going back home again, Carl Perkins then listed the bills that I were for. He said, bring those up again.
Okay.
I will look favorably on them now.
You got passed? Okay, that's great.
I figure myself, what Republican congressman gets his ranking Democrat member, hey, put him in again, we'll give you a more friendly look at it.
Because that would have been tough. The Republicans didn't control Congress at all while you were there for 20 years.
Yeah.
And so you had to work with those guys or you'd never gotten anything.
Had to work with them or else out.
Yeah, you'd have been out of luck. And that makes quite a bit of sense. Did you take much interest in foreign policy? Not really. You like domestic policy more? During Vietnam, you were in during the entire Vietnam War.
Yeah.
In Congress. You were in from the late 50s all the way to through the 70s. Yeah. So the Vietnam War was going on that entire time you were in Congress.
Yeah.
That had to have been tough on you to go to meetings, and I'm sure you had young people who were getting killed in your district or getting buried, you know, that were, average age of death was 19 and a half, I think. Do you think that was just a tough thing to be for Vietnam? I don't even know if you really spoke out against it or for it, but
it was a tough thing for them. And when they had the line that they wouldn't go past, we wouldn't go past. I visited there and went up to the line, then worked it out. This seems next to impossible to me, but it was near the end. And they made arrangement on both sides, so a few of us could go over and meet with the Vietnamese.
So you were in Vietnam?
In the North Vietnamese, I should say.
Did you actually go to Vietnam? Were you over there as a congressman?
Oh yeah, I was.
You were?
In
wow.
South Vietnam.
Okay.
And then I went for a little bit into North Vietnam.
Wow.
And that
just when they about gave up.
Did you think the war was necessary? Did you think the war was necessary?
Not from the beginning.
So you were against the war? Did you ever publicly denounce the war?
Yeah, you voted against it.
Okay. Yeah?
Interesting.
And when I voted against it, I told why. So we got no business over there.
Yeah.
That had to have been difficult.
If the Japanese need protection, I think they're pretty good. I pull the Japanese in there.
Okay.
They should be able to take care of themselves.
So you really didn't see eye to eye with Johnson and Nixon on Vietnam at all. You wanted to get out of there and keep out of there.
No.
Which really in Minnesota seems to be a bipartisan thing. They don't like being involved in these foreign conflicts a lot. It seems that's not unusual. But I suppose, you know, this was going on and you were in office and you had to deal with it.
Yeah. One of the things that I don't think I mentioned is that Nixon tapped the phones of congressmen.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you believe your phones were tapped ever, or not sure?
I didn't. Hooked up a mechanism on my phones, so everything was tapped.
So
phone calls.
You tapped yourself?
Yeah. And
wow.
Then we had 2 secretaries working on them all the time, so we'd have that. Then I dropped it down to 1 because it became pretty well known that somebody would get the tap message from that. And then I couldn't resist it. I picked up the phone again, and then I listened. When the phone came up, I heard the click of it come. I said, Dick, just want you to know, I'm tapping all of your messages, so you don't really have to tap yours. You can just go get a copy of ours. We'll print them out for you.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
I never heard that click again.
Wow. Do you think all of the congressmen had their phones tapped, probably? Or most of you probably did, I would think. I don't know.
I did that with Perkins, too.
Do you think Perkins and all those guys were suspicious of their phones being tapped? Like, did you guys talk with each other in the Congress?
After that horse part, we did. And I told him, I said, now, you talk to the guy next to you, and that's a Republican Democrat, but there may be some Democrat over on the other side, if you're sitting with me, and you want to ask him a question, just cut right across. Is that all right, Carl? Oh, yeah, that's right.
Interesting.
So then, after a little bit, we had the conversation going through there. It was marvelous.
Yeah, that's neat.
But you guys all talked with each other.
Some other committees came, Sharon came and talked to me, but they never could get agreement on their committee.
Oh, they had different people to work with, too.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
That's interesting.
What's your opinion on President Trump?
I hope he gets the wall up.
You do?
Yeah. I like that picture of the wall where the 600 feet, it comes up, and then there's you have to look at me for this. Then at 600 feet, it goes in a ways, and then it looks like another 400, 500 feet. It goes up from there. And so if they put up ladders and stuff like that, crawl up that first one, they can't have enough to go over the others. And then they can, we could take pictures of who they are and all that stuff.
Yeah. So you think he's doing a good job otherwise?
I think so. I mean, it's too bad he's worked for that television company for a while.
Yeah.
With his language.
Right.
Yeah.
His language isn't always appropriate.
By and large, I support him. And I served with some other people who were sassy like that.
You know, sometimes they get more done, huh?
Yeah, and so I used to go over and talk with them. And I don't know if the other time I told you about how when the Republicans asked me to come out and teach them how they work with the other side, then the Democrats came out, and they've been waiting in there all the time, and they wanted to talk to me next, so I invited them out and invited the Republicans back, and they both stood where they would regularly. So I said, I want you to practice speaking to each other.
Yeah.
That's what they wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, things were much different in those days, that's for sure. It seems like there was a little more trust. And the Democrats were not as liberal, probably, from the southern states, of course, and maybe some of the Republicans were more moderate.
But those guys who wanted to talk to me at that time, they were a whole bunch of liberals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Education and Labor Committee, they probably would
I
be.
talked to them about that, and they said to me, they watched when Democrats started going over to the Republican table and talked to us. They said they were all conservatives. And I said, I'll teach you how, when the majority could do that. And then stand one row back. You weren't noticing the people behind them.
Okay.
I was one of them listening
Okay.
to you guys.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I said, we know you did. That's why we thought we'd talk to you.
Yeah. Did it put you in an awkward spot sometimes when Minnesota had these guys running for president and vice president, Humphrey, Mondale? You know, we had a Minnesotan on the ticket in 64, 68, 70, well, not 72, 76, 80, 84. because you were from Minnesota, but they were Democrats, did it put you in a bad spot, or did you just say philosophically we're not on the same page, but I know him as a person? I mean, certainly you knew Humphrey and Mondale.
Yeah. No, but I never considered it put me in a bad spot. It didn't take Mondale long to learn how to behave himself.
And Humphrey ran for president during Vietnam. You don't believe that he really felt that we should have been there, right? Wasn't Humphrey anti-Vietnam, and then at the end he kind of changed his position?
I think so.
At first he had to be with Johnson.
Yeah. McNamara is the one who pushed that.
The defense secretary.
And I totally disagreed with him.
Did you serve with McNamara in the House? Wasn't he a House member at one time?
I don't remember.
I don't remember if he was or not.
It doesn't come back to me.
Yeah, I don't remember. I know, well, he was the head of General Motors, wasn't he, or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he served in the House.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he picked, but he escalated the war quite a bit.
I must not have liked him very well because I got rid of my Chevrolet and bought a Studebaker.
Is that right? Because of McNamara? Boy, you were strong-willed. Wow. Yeah, I know he was the head of some company out. I think it was one of the car companies.
That's
so
McNamara.
McNamara was.
Really?
Okay. I think he even was kind of a Republican, if I remember right. But Johnson wanted someone seen as strong in the Defense Department.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty cool. I like to hear that.
So do you have any advice for young people getting involved in politics?
Begin as soon as you can. So they have clubs and things of that nature. They used to have clubs in politics. I happened to organize the first college club in St. Olaf, in which we did debates and speeches, just like if you were running for office. That was a lot of help.
Like a debate club.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A group of guys. I came in the middle of the year because the war was over, and so I was walking from one hall to another, and I said, "Where are you heading?" And they said, "We're heading over to the library." And I said, "What's going on?" Says, "There's so many of you. You all going to check out books?" And I said, "No, we're going to go over there and elect a new president to the Republican Club." I said, "Oh, who are you running against? Who are you running and who are you running against?" Well, they said Roger somebody or other was running as a Democrat, and I was running. No, and they said, "Why don't you run as a Republican?" I said, "Okay." And so I was elected head of the Republican Club. Then it was in order to develop expertise in debates and speeches, stuff like that. I got a hold of the head of Toastmasters Club in St. Paul and asked him how you started a club, and he said, "We don't ever start a club amongst colleges because the students aren't there long enough." And I said, "Could we start one at St. Olaf? Would you prohibit us from doing it?" He said, "No, why don't you go ahead and start it?" So we had a Toastmasters Club at St. Olaf and then a Toastmasters Club too. So then later on we had two Toastmasters Clubs, one for the freshmen and one for the senior people. So those were all parts of preparing me. and then talking with my wife about it, and various things like that, and listening to some professors while we were farming, going back in on Saturday and listening to them, and decided I'd start some local efforts like that. So all of that building up, finally I decided to run.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I did a lot of learning up to that. Mm-hmm. Learning how to get endorsed. You know, that business I talked to you about, mm-hmm. of sitting amongst other people who are not of your party. So.
Good advice.
Well, what is it that caused me to go into politics? I think it would be twofold. One was joining a number of farmers groups, and then getting elected president and build an interrelationship there. And then I did something I guess I didn't mention. I went to a farmers union meeting, and they looked like pretty shocked when I walked in the room.
Yeah.
Their meeting was going on.
More of a Democrat group.
Yeah, it was a Democrat group. And so we talked, and I asked them questions and threw suggestions at them. And they invited me to join. And I said, could I belong to the Farm Bureau and Farmers Union at the same time? And they said, sure.
So you belong to both groups.
Both groups.
Wow, that's neat.
That's how I could be more than one. And I told both groups that I was doing. So after a while, we merged.
And they were fine with that. Well, that's neat.
Yeah, let's merge. And so.
Oh, that's great.
That's about all I can tell you. Go do it.